throw away for obvious reasons, and this happened yesterday not today, because as soon as I got home I passed out on the couch. 17 meters, decided to go for a paddleboard ride on the river near my house. I left at about 8 o'clock not worried about it getting dark, because I only expected to be out for 45 minutes tops, me being a stupid horny teen. I thought it would be a great idea to jerk off while I was on the river. I don't get much privacy at home with my family, so I figured why not, since no one was around to see me way out there. So flash forward about 10 minutes, I'm finished and I'm ready to start heading home, when I realized that at some point my paddle must fallen into the river and floated away. Yes, they float, but I wasn't paying attention, so the current took it along. I started to panic, because the sun was starting to set, and I was almost a mile away from the launch, and my service was non-existent at this point. I knew that it's gonna be pitch black pretty soon. So I decided to hand paddle against the current in frigid water. It's like 45 degrees Fahrenheit this time of year, for almost a mile. After 45 minutes of hand paddling and lots of cursing under my breath, I made it back with numb hands and down a paddle. I told my parents that a big wave tipped me over and I lost it, but I owe them $50 for a new one, which is fair I guess. TLDR. Decided to jerk off while paddleboarding on a river and my paddle floated away, resulting in me using my hands to paddle nearly a mile in cold water. TIFU really bad, guys. Recently, well, before the collapse of civilization, me and my girlfriend were experimenting sexually. Now I wanted to try anal, but she says I can't know how it feels, but agreed if at some point beforehand she could penetrate me. Now I'm a firm believer that I won't enjoy this, but I agree, because fair is fair, right? I do love the woman after all. Cue the lockdown and it's been 4 months without sex as we live separately and am blue balling pretty hard. So naturally I decide to have a wank. Then out of nowhere I realized I have a chicken hot dog going spare. These are a bit firmer than normal hot dog sausages. My shame and fuck up begins here. I'm jerking off, and as most of us know, when you are horny almost anything feels like a good idea in the heat of it all. I decided to lube up a little and insert the hot dog up myself. Guess what happened next? I lost my grip and my asshole decides it'll swallow the damn thing whole. It's gone too deep, my fingers can't reach it, so I push with all my might and nothing comes out. It gets worse. Rather than try to get it, I decided the best course of action is to continue my 5-knuckle shuffle and bust a nut everywhere. It was intense. I then panicked and thought to myself, how the fuck do I persuade the hospital staff that I slipped onto this thing? Fuck. I decided it's toilet time and thankfully it slipped out with a bit of effort. My experimenting days are now over. TL. Doctor, got horny, stuck a hot dog up my ass while I masturbated, and it got stuck. Eventually came out. Edit. To clarify that this took place maybe 15 minutes before I posted this. This actually happened today. Obligatory throwaway. Resubmission because I didn't read the rules. I have never given head, but have always wanted to try. It was really awkward at first for me. I don't watch porn, never had sex, and had a terrible middle school sex education. The guy I'm seeing was super patient with me, which I found really sweet, and he teaches me where to grip and place my mouth. Eventually I'm working into a good rhythm between sucking and also using my hand. It's a little painful because he's really well endowed and my jaw aches after a bit, but I'm determined to soldier through it to the finish line. Here's where the fuck up begins. The guy I'm sucking off hasn't fapped in over a week or longer. As I work up the pace, I feel him shiver and spasm beneath me, and I know what's about to come next, pun intended. I'm determined not to be a pussy, so I decide to just swallow it and see how it goes. I'm not sure about you, but swallowing with an open mouth is not very intuitive, especially if a juthy, slick, alien meat rod is being drilled into your esophagus. I feel the warm, salty liquid build in my throat, and I'm able to swallow the first bit, but after that, it's about effective as popping your mouth over a Coke bottle with Mentos in it. I lock my lips around the shaft, determined to catch it, but to no avail. My mouth is overstuffed between the vast volume of cum, dick, and my own saliva from keeping my mouth open for too long. All of a sudden my nose is burning and runny, and then I feel semen drip out of my nose and run down my chin. It was honestly a good laugh, and we had a good rest of the day together. I hope Reddit enjoys this story more than I do, because my nose still feels pretty fucked up. Also had a hard time chewing dinner. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. TL. Doctor tried to give head for the first time and swallow. The nut was too big and came out my nose. We were in this cafe with a freestanding piano, open to use for everyone. At some point, a random girl started playing the piano. She played some classical stuff, but also piano versions of pop songs and some better known anime themes and openings. I joked about being a weeb for knowing them, which was kind of funny. We laughed about it. Then she started playing the first chords of some sad song, and I was super baffled because of how it moved me. I didn't even know where I knew that song from. I kinda zoomed out and couldn't pay attention to our conversation anymore. Then I began to cry a little and my date asked me if everything is okay. I said I don't know what's going on and went to the toilet to calm down. The date went kinda well afterwards, but I don't know if we meet again. I brainstormed a little and it seems like the song was Sadness and Sorrow from the original Naruto series. I watched that 10 years ago. TL. Doctor, Weepy Weeb cries on front of his date because some random girl plays a Naruto song. Warning. Looking at other posts on here, I have to say that this is going to be a tame one. Since lockdown started and the United Kingdom went crazy for home baking, my fiancée has been lovingly making bread for us when she finds the spare time. And as an amateur bread connoisseur, I have to say that these loaves are honestly the best I've ever tasted. Well, so far this morning we've been cooped up inside because it's hot out, so my fiancée decided to make a couple of loaves. Over the course of the last hour whilst the bread was rising, we've had an onset of cabin fever. What started off as a mature conversation about garden sheds quickly devolved into playful and goofy dancing in our kitchen. This is where the story goes south. They were just sitting there, faintly glistening in the morning sun, having been recently released from their restrictive covers. The dough looked perfect, both pillowing out from their tins and ready to be put into the oven. Well, I couldn't help myself. In a moment of weakness and playful aggression, I gave one loaf a clean and firm slap. The mood changed. The mix of dread and mild anger on my fiancée's face was immediate. "What the F asterisk 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 are you doing?" she said as I retracted my hand from the crime scene. Within moments, what was once a voluptuous item of food shriveled down into the bread equivalent of Spirited Away's Ubaba, and I knew that I had F asterisk 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 ED up big time in a small kind of way. After some mild beratement, from which our neighbors now probably think I'm a cold-hearted monster, my fiancé reformed the dough then stormed off to continue looking at sheds. We are still waiting to see what the second loaf will look like, but seeing as the first looks absolutely perfect after its time in the oven, I have to admit that I feel bad. Thankfully, all she demands is a cup of tea for reparation, so I'd best get going. TL. Doctor, I slapped the life out a loaf of bread before it was meant to go into the oven and now I hate myself. It happened like an hour ago, and I'm still laughing. So, I work at a certain shopping mart, now, the one with walls, and because of COVID and stuff, someone need to stay outside the doors and count people who go in and out, and if there's too much, tell them to wait a little. A lady shows up with a smaller person behind her. Said lady was already small, about like 5'7". So I tell them to wait, that two persons exit the shop, so they can enter. Soon enough it's their turn to get in, and I tell them, you and your child can get in. Now's the foo. Little did I know, it wasn't a child, it was a midget. Fast forward 5 seconds and we are all looking at each other like, bruh. They finally go in, and I waited a bit, so they were far from the doors, and rushed in the break room, so I don't have to see them exit. TL. Doctor, I mistook a midget for a kid and I think that she didn't took it well. Edit. The title should have been TIFU, by trying to be polite. My bad, I thought I did write that but I didn't. The story comes from about 6 hours ago, when I was eating dinner. I waited to see if the pain would subside, and it didn't, so I deem this story postable. I, 21F, have trained my dog, 8F, to jump into my lap at the end of every meal, so she can smell the meal and I can give her little pieces of meat or vegetables. She only weighs about 16 pounds, so it's super cute how excited she is to be a part of the family, and my dad in particular really hates it, which makes it more worthwhile. We've had a couple incidents in the past in which she's banged her head on the table while jumping, but those were her fuck ups. Today was dinner as usual, and recently I've been working on inciting her to jump with pointed eye contact. I took a mouthful of strawberry and glanced down into her big puppy eyes and made the TIFU mistake of mimicking her pleading face by pouting, raising my eyebrows, and widening my eyes. She immediately coiled and sprung her little head straight into my funny bone as both my hands were resting on the table. It was honestly one of the worst pains I've ever felt, second to concussion headaches. I spit out my mouthful trying not to throw up and tried to stay conscious. It felt like I had broken my elbow, along with setting the outer forearm on fire. It was like the most extreme funny bone pain I've experienced, far worse than the normal tingling. This was a deep ache and fire. It's been 6 hours since dinner and my arm is still burning and aching, and my left 3 fingers on my left hand are having trouble moving. PS, my dog's head is completely unperturbed. TL. Doctor conditioned my dog to jump into my lap when I looked at her funny. Am now suffering terrible elbow and forearm pain from dog head to funny bone collision. Early this morning my partner and I, went skinny dipping in a local swimming hole. It as a special occasion. The weather was delightful. I've been there a few times. The place is quiet and reasonably private for the time of day. I am a little skittish about snakes in rivers, but never gave turtles much thought. Fish don't bother me either. As we swam I saw a turtle head or two popping out of the water. They were far enough in the distance. I told my partner, who got a little nervous. After soaking for a while, we decided to head out for coffee and breakfast. As we started swimming toward the place on the rocks where we stashed our backpacks, something bit the very tip of my penis and yanked. The pitch of my scream was high. My partner lost their shit. For a moment I thought it had been a violent fish, but the bruise on my glands tell a different story. It a clear bite mark, one I would rather not have. And yes, gentlemen, it hurts. Still. The guy an ice and antibiotic cream. We did the typical Google search. What happens if a turtle bites your pecker? There are answers out there, and folks who actually do that kind of stuff. Seems as if I am alright. The skin wasn't broken or pierced. Just something like a turtle hickey surrounding my meatus. One I could vet on without. So, the special occasion may not be as special as I had hoped. Out of commission for a while. Thanks for your sympathy, TL. Doctor to a turtle, a pecker in the river looks like bait. I found out. Some backstory. I have 2 dogs, a golden retriever and a chocolate lab. I love them to bits, but they are hairy bastards, so I usually don't let them jump on my bed. Now on to the fuck up. It happened about 30 minutes ago. I was laying in bed watching some Netflix and my lab came and put his head on my bed. I thought about it for a while and decided to let him jump on. What's the worst that could happen? After he jumped on, my golden also decided to join the party. My lab is pretty grumpy, so he doesn't like to cuddle a lot. So when these rare moments occur I tend to enjoy them. I should also add that it's getting pretty hot where I live. So here I was, laying in bed with my golden to my side and my lab between my legs. A hot night combined with a 45-kilogram dog laying on top of me. Yeah. When I gently nudged him to get off me, he retaliated by stomping on my crown jewels. Now I'm laying in bed thinking about the times where my balls didn't hurt. TL. Doctor, my dog karate kicked me in the groin because I made him get off my bed. So typical disclaimer that this was last night, but we were camping, so I couldn't share this sooner. My family and I were camping somewhere and happily making s'mores. I have a young sister who made a small comment about eating the s'mores and consuming pure sugar, mainly in the form of marshmallow, and I, being a smartass, decided to clean. Alas, these also have animal hooves, horns, and bones. These are some of the ingredients for gelatine, a common ingredient in marshmallows. Gelatine is absolutely disgusting to my mother. She won't eat gummy bears, jello, anything with gelatine. When I said this, she looked at me with disgust and horror, and I realized my mistake too late. She had me double check the ingredients, and, sure enough, gelatine was listed. I felt horrible. She refused to make herself a s'more. She usually would have at least one, and I always thought she enjoyed them as a little treat. We found a brand marshmallow, and its ingredients says it's less than 2% gelatine, and she ended up buying it, so maybe she'll let it slide. But sadly, I think I've ruined marshmallows / s'mores for my mother forever. TL. Doctor, I accidentally let slip that marshmallows have gelatine in them while around my mom, thus ruining them for her forever.